Leah Moss pushed her cleaning cart down the hospital corridor, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead blending with distant beeping machines. It was nearing midnight, and though exhaustion tugged at her, she took comfort in the quiet rhythm of the nearly empty emergency wing. Fresh from a long shift, she moved carefully, mindful of the taped-off areas and the lingering bustle around the operating rooms. The sterile smell was familiar, a scent she didn't mind. It reminded her she was part of something bigger, even if it went unnoticed by most. Leah's worn uniform bore smudges from the day's work, and her hands were rough from cleaning and restocking supplies. She felt a faint ache behind her eyes but pushed it aside. Her moment of peace was soon shattered by the sharp sound of footsteps coming briskly towards her. Dr. Adrian Cole, the hospital's renowned surgeon, appeared at the other end of the hallway. He was tall and imposing, his crisp white coat flawlessly clean, his face set in a way that suggested impatience was his default mood. Without slowing down, Adrian caught sight of Leah's cart near the entrance of the operating theater and his jaw tightened. "What do you think you're doing, Moss?" he barked, his voice echoing off the sterile walls. His eyes locked onto her with a mix of disdain and irritation. "That's a restricted zone. You're putting patients at risk. Do you even know what you're doing?" Leah blinked, caught off guard but steadying herself. The nurses nearby glanced at each other, uncomfortable with the sudden confrontation. She opened her mouth to explain, but the tension hung heavily in the air, and all she could manage was a quiet, "I'm just cleaning, doctor." The moment was sharp and public. Adrian's furious glare made it clear he thought she had no place there. Adrian's sharp tones sliced through the quiet corridor like a scalpel. "Just cleaning? This isn't some janitor's closet you're shuffling through. It's a surgical environment. Sterility is paramount. One misplaced cart, one careless touch, and you could jeopardize a life." He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a harsh whisper sharp enough to cut. Leah's hands trembled slightly as she steadied her breath. The heat of embarrassment flushed her cheeks, but she refused to back down. "Doctor, I followed the cleaning schedule to the letter," she said softly. "I made sure to avoid all restricted areas and sanitized every surface I touched." Her eyes searched his face, hoping for understanding, for some acknowledgement that she was doing her job well, despite the weariness weighing on her shoulders. But Adrian wasn't interested in excuses. "Protocols? You're blind to them, evidently," he snapped. "I don't have time to babysit overgrown children mucking about with the lives of my patients." His words stung, and a small group of hospital staff had gathered nearby, drawn in by the confrontation. Nurses shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. Some looked away, unwilling to witness the spectacle, while others exchanged tight-lipped expressions that spoke volumes. Margot, a nurse Leah had grown to respect over her years at the hospital, approached cautiously. "Adrian, maybe a softer approach would help, not the yelling, please," she said with gentle firmness, but Adrian waved her off dismissively. Leah swallowed hard, feeling the weight of judgment and humiliation settle like stones on her chest. Her uniform suddenly felt heavy, as though it marked her as nothing more than the target of derision. She gave a small nod and began pushing the cart away, desperate to remove herself from the scene before anyone else wasted pity on her. "Where do you think you're going?" "I said hold." Adrian's voice rose, louder this time, drawing the attention of everyone in the hallway. The hospital's hushed atmosphere, punctuated by beeping monitors and faint announcements over the PA system, now felt charged and electric with tension. Leah froze, the cart awkwardly halting in the middle of the corridor. "I'm done here," Leah murmured, her voice low but steady despite the lump forming in her throat. "I'm not the one disrupting patient care." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "You're walking away from responsibility. You need to apologize. Right now. Or I'll have security escorted you out." The threat hung in the air with chilling weight. Leah's breath hitched. Security? She imagined heads turning, whispers swirling into laughter or cruel jokes behind her back. The thought of being forcibly removed from a place she cared about, despite her station, was a sharp sting she wasn't prepared to endure. But she had no choice to acquiesce. There was no point fighting a battle that had unwinnable odds. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, the words tasting bitter as they escaped her lips. The corridor seemed to blur around her, her vision narrowing to just the heated expression on Adrian's face and the confused, expecting eyes of the crowd. A nurse nearby coughed awkwardly, attempting to break the uncomfortable silence. Leah felt the sting of tears, whether from exhaustion, anger, or shame she couldn't tell, blur her vision briefly. Hastily, she turned and retreated down a side hallway, the clatter of her cart wheels echoing like distant thunder behind her. Once she reached the break room, Leah sank onto a metal chair, her back pressed stiffly against the wall. She reached into her pocket with shaky fingers and dialed the number of her sister, Emma, grateful for the connection to something warm and steady. Emma's voice on the other end was a soothing balm, a reminder she wasn't alone in these long, draining nights. "I don't know what to do, Em," Leah whispered, her tired voice catching. "He humiliated me, right there, in front of everyone." The hurt was undeniable, but beneath it lay something firmer, an ember refusing to die out. Emma's voice was steady, imbued with encouragement. "You did nothing wrong, Leah. You're better than his arrogance. Don't let him make you doubt yourself." Leah let a small, grateful smile break through the gloom. "I just want to finish my shift and not get in trouble. But he won't let it go. He's racing after me, yelling again." On the other end, Emma sighed. "Hold your ground, tell him you're doing your job. You're not the one who needs to be sorry." But Leah knew it wouldn't be that easy. Adrian's anger wasn't a simple misunderstanding, it was a display of power meant to intimidate. When Leah returned to the main corridor, Adrian was waiting, arms crossed and eyes blazing like storm clouds. "Back so soon?" That apology wasn't satisfactory, he snapped. "I'm giving you one last chance to admit your incompetence and accept responsibility for your reckless actions." Nurses averted their eyes, murmurs rising like a tide. Leah's heart pounded fiercely, but beneath the tremble was something new, a rising defiance swelling quietly inside her. "Doctor, I've told you what I know. I'm cleaning as I should." Adrian's expression twisted into a sneer of disbelief. "You think that's enough? Lives depend on precision here, not careless cartwheels. I won't tolerate mistakes where people's well-being is concerned." The silence stretched, every pair of eyes locked on Leah, waiting for her to crumble under pressure. She glanced briefly at the faces surrounding her, some sympathetic, others uncomfortable, but none stepping forward. The corridor felt like an arena, and she was trapped under an unforgiving spotlight. Leah steadied her voice. "If my work threatens patient safety, then show me the breach. I'll fix it. But don't dismiss me without cause." Adrian narrowed his eyes, then abruptly turned his back and stalked away, leaving the gathering crowd buzzing in hushed tones. Left standing alone, Leah felt the oppressive tide of humiliation and exhaustion wash over her anew. Yet beneath that weight, a spark of determination flickered, one she barely recognized. What did she do next? How could she prove herself when no one seemed willing to listen? The question hung heavy in the sterile air, unanswered. Leah's gaze fell to the polished floor as the corridor slowly emptied, leaving her with a crushing silence and the echo of a challenge she hadn't yet chosen to meet. The hospital corridor was quieter now, the crowd having dispersed, but the crackle of tension still lingered like static in the air. Leah pushed her cart toward the cleaning closet, steadying her breath and urging herself to focus on the tasks ahead. The weight of Dr. Adrian Cole's anger and the sting of public humiliation had left a bruise on her confidence, but she was quietly determined not to let it break her. Suddenly, sharp voices pierced the night, urgent cries from a nurse rushing past, signaling trouble from the adjacent ward. Leah instinctively turned toward the sound. A small crowd gathered outside room 314, the door propped open by a worried orderly. A middle-aged patient lay pale and unconscious on the hospital bed, their breathing shallow and uneven. "Call a code blue," someone shouted. But Leah's trained eyes caught the subtle but troubling signs: the patient's flushed skin, rapidly swelling face, and barely audible wheezing. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't a standard cardiac arrest, this was something else: anaphylaxis, a severe allergic reaction that could kill within minutes without immediate intervention. Without hesitation, Leah pushed past the crowd, her exhaustion forgotten. "We need epinephrine now," she said firmly, locking eyes with the nearest nurse. "Is the kit ready?" Nurses exchanged startled glances, some hesitating under the incredulousness of a cleaner stepping up in crisis. But Leah's tone brooked no refusal. "Epinephrine. Intramuscular injection. Quickly." One nurse nodded and sprinted to fetch the emergency kit. Meanwhile, Leah knelt beside the patient, gently elevating their legs and patting their cheeks to stimulate responsiveness. She barked out orders with calm authority: oxygen. Monitor vitals. Alert the attending physician. A few moments later, the nurse returned, and with Leah's guidance, administered the injection. The patient's breathing gradually eased, color returning to their face as the swelling subsided. The room was charged with relief, and murmurs rippled through the assembled staff: surprise, awe, and a touch of disbelief. Dr. Adrian Cole arrived on the scene, his surgical mask pulled down, eyes wide as he took in the situation. Leah stood up, wiping sweat from her brow, exhaustion threatening to reclaim her, but her composure remained intact. "What happened here?" Adrian demanded, his tone sharp but tinged with genuine concern. "A severe allergic reaction, doctor." The patient's chart didn't highlight the allergy. "The team was about to administer medication before it was caught," Leah explained crisply. Adrian's gaze flicked from the patient to Leah, then back again, confusion and something like respect altering the hardness that had dominated his expression only minutes ago. Her colleagues, some still in scrubs, whispered among themselves. "She saved the patient. Who knew she had that knowledge? We misjudged her." The silence was thick as Adrian finally broke it, voice low and hesitant: "Leah, explain how you recognized this so swiftly." Leah shrugged off the weight of the question. "I studied medicine before my family needed me at home. I stayed involved as best I could: books, courses, volunteering. The knowledge stayed." The stunned looks from nearby nurses and doctors showed the contrast between Leah's quiet humility and Adrian's begrudging realization. The man who had humiliated her now found himself speechless in the hospital hallway, an ironic role reversal unfolding as praise quietly began to surface. What was meant as a cleaning errand became a life-saving moment, one nurse whispered. Eyes glistened with newfound admiration. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck, clearly unsettled. He cleared his throat. "Leah, I owe you an apology." But Leah shook her head, a faint smile curling at the edge of her lips. "Just do your job as well as I do mine." As the staff dispersed, the earlier hostility seemed to evaporate. Leah's quiet competence had shifted the dynamic, leaving colleagues to reconsider their assumptions. Leah lingered a moment by the ward door, her heart still pounding but her soul oddly alight, renewed from the depths of humiliation to the heights of unexpected recognition. The hospital's corridors, once a place of scorn, had become her stage, and she had risen to the occasion. Leah Moss left the ward, the echoes of urgent voices fading behind her, and found herself once again in the hospital's long corridors. The sterile walls, the constant hum of machines, the faint scent of disinfectant, they all felt different now. Somehow, the hospital had transformed from a place where she was invisible, a mere cleaner in the background, to a place where her knowledge and quiet strength had left an impression. The truth was, Leah had always carried more than a mop and a cleaning cart. Years before, she had been a medical student, sharp, ambitious, and full of promise. But life had a way of rewriting plans. When her father fell ill and her younger siblings needed care, she had put her dreams on hold. Medical school was a luxury they simply couldn't afford anymore. So instead, she found work as a hospital cleaner, knowing the hospital's walls, the rhythms of the wards, and the importance of every sterile corner and sanitized surface. Her simple uniform and worn shoes masked a mind still hungry for medicine's mysteries and a heart devoted to healing in any way she could. She balanced her demanding job with evenings spent watching medical lectures online, reading journals, and volunteering at free clinics whenever her schedule allowed. Leah's life was measured in small, quiet acts of perseverance and sacrifice, invisible to most but essential all the same. Walking down the corridor, her thoughts slipped to Adrian Cole, the surgeon who had so brusquely dismissed her just hours earlier. The sharpness in his tone, the disdain he'd shown, it was not unique. She wasn't surprised. Hospitals were hierarchies, steep and unyielding. Doctors at the top, nurses in the middle, and at the bottom, cleaning and support staff like her, rarely granted a voice or respect. But today, something had shifted, not only in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. She had always known her worth, even if the world didn't acknowledge it. The look in Adrian's eyes when she stabilized the patient, the brief, stunned silence, it was a crack in his armor. She demonstrated her worth with facts, not words. Her actions spoke louder than any accusations. Stopping near the hospital's bright atrium, Leah took a deep breath and let the night air wash over her face. Outside, the city lights blinked with stories just out of reach. Even in the face of exhaustion, she found a spark of hope kindling inside, a belief that somehow, her story was far from over. Leah's journey was not just one of survival but of quiet triumphs. She often thought about the delicate balance she kept each day. The hospital was not only a workplace but a second home, where every clean floor and organized supply shelf helped keep patients safe. Her role was humble, yet necessary, a testament to the unseen care woven into the fabric of medicine. As the night deepened, Leah's mind drifted back to her family, the siblings depending on her, the sacrifices made and silently endured. Her simple attire was not a reflection of her lack of ambition but a shield of modesty and practicality shaped by circumstances. She dressed simply because there were bigger concerns in life than appearances. Her identity was far more complex than anyone could guess. Her dreams were deferred, not lost. Leah smiled softly to herself, the faintest trace of pride blooming in her chest. Whatever judgments cast on her by others had nothing to do with who she truly was or what she carried inside. She understood the world in a broader light, a place where every role mattered, where humility coexisted with strength. Leah's story was one of resilience and quiet dignity, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary soul can be found in the most ordinary places. She would continue to work alongside those who doubted her, never flaunting her abilities but ready to show her true worth when it counted most. She felt ready to face whatever came next, the earlier humiliation now a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block. The hallway, once a stage for her shame, was now a path forward. With a final deep breath, Leah pushed her cart down the corridor, moving toward her next task with a steady heart and an unshakable sense of purpose. The night was far from over, but she was no longer just a cleaner. She was a quiet force, a guardian of life in her own right, waiting for the moment to prove that sometimes the real heroes walk unrecognized among us. As she disappeared around the corner, the hospital's heartbeat pulsed steadily, undaunted, persistent, and full of untold stories, like hers. In the days that followed Leah's life-saving intervention, the atmosphere within the hospital began to shift quietly but noticeably. Word of her quick thinking and calm presence during the emergency traveled through staff conversations like a healing balm. Those who had once seen her merely as a background figure, the cleaner who pushed carts silently through halls, began to look at her with a different, more respectful gaze. Adrian Cole found himself grappling with this subtle yet profound change. The surgeon who had shouted accusations and dismissed Leah's presence mere hours before now avoided immediate confrontation, his usual sharp-edged demeanor softening around her. Privately, he mulled over his own behavior, wrestling with a discomfort he had never expected to feel. One afternoon, the hospital administrator, Ms. Janet Palmer, called Adrian into her office. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting parallel lines across the polished floor. "Adrian," Janet began smoothly but firmly, "we've received several reports from staff expressing concern about your conduct towards support personnel, specifically towards Leah Moss. The hospital values respect and teamwork at every level, and while I acknowledge the pressure surgeons face, it is imperative that we maintain professional decorum." Adrian, stung but attentive, nodded slowly. "I understand, Janet. I suppose I let my temper get the best of me." The admission was earnest, a departure from his usual deflective stance. Janet's gaze was steady. "This isn't just about temper. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued. Leah's contributions during the emergency were exemplary. There will be no formal disciplinary action, but I expect you to reflect on how you engage with the team." The conversation was a turning point. Adrian left the office with a mix of irritation and grudging respect. It was a reminder that his behavior did not exist in a vacuum, and that change was necessary, not just for Leah's sake, but for the entire hospital community. Meanwhile, Leah received warm gestures from colleagues. Nurse Margot approached her after a shift, handing over a folded piece of paper. "Leah, this is from the hospital's volunteer coordinator. They'd like to discuss a new role for you in patient care support." Leah unfolded the note with careful hands, reading the invitation for an interview to join the patient support team, the kind of role that could leverage her medical knowledge and experience beyond cleaning duties. Her heart fluttered with a cautious hope. The opportunity felt like an unspoken acknowledgement of her value. Over the next weeks, Leah worked alongside the nursing staff in the patient care unit, assisting with vitals, patient education, and administrative tasks. Her meticulous nature and steady manner won over patients and staff alike. The transition was challenging. She was learning new protocols, absorbing fresh responsibilities. Yet with each successful interaction, her confidence blossomed. Adrian, once a source of friction, began to change as well. On one particularly busy evening, he found Leah arranging supplies by a patient's bedside. He offered her a nod of approval, an unspoken acknowledgement of the partnership they were forming. It was subtle but meaningful, a sign that respect, once earned under pressure, was now mutual. One afternoon, as Leah left her post to grab a cup of coffee, she was surprised when Adrian approached her in the break room. His usual briskness was tempered by a more genuine tone. "Leah," he began, hesitating briefly, "I want to apologize for how I treated you. It was uncalled for." His eyes held a sincerity that made Leah pause. She smiled gently. "Thank you, Doctor. What matters is that we're working toward better understanding. Every role here is important." Adrian smiled back, a hint of warmth breaking through his professional facade. "Agreed. And you've reminded me that excellence comes in many forms." Later that week, hospital management held a small gathering to recognize the efforts of staff who had gone above and beyond. Leah received quiet but heartfelt applause as she was acknowledged for her life-saving actions. It was not a grand ceremony, but it held weight, an official nod to the qualities she had demonstrated through skill, courage, and compassion. After the event, Leah stepped outside into the cool evening air. The hospital buzzed behind her, alive and relentless. She paused, feeling the night settle around her like a gentle companion. A wave of gratitude washed over her, the validation, the new opportunities, and even the healing of old wounds. She thought about the moments of humiliation, the harsh words, and the doubt cast upon her. They seemed distant now, eclipsed by her quiet triumph and the respect earned by her actions. But more than that, she felt proud, not because she had proven others wrong but because she had held on to her dignity and strength throughout. As Leah made her way home, her mind was busy with possibilities. The future was no longer a shadow overshadowed by past sacrifices but a canvas waiting for her to paint her own story. Her spirit felt lighter, yet more resolute. She was no longer simply the hospital cleaner, she was a vital thread woven into the fabric of care, a presence that mattered deeply. Back at the hospital, Adrian lingered in the empty corridor where he had first berated Leah. He reflected on the lessons learned, the thin line between authority and arrogance, and the real cost of underestimating those around him. There was a quiet regret but also a hopeful recognition that people can change. For both of them, the night had opened new doors, unspoken but wide. The hospital itself, busy, unpredictable, and brimming with humanity, held countless stories of struggle and redemption. Leah's was one of them, a story that invited all who heard it to consider, what would you have done in her place? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of courage and resilience. See you in our next story.